Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking at Apple. So, huge news in the tech space, to be honest. This is quite revolutionary. It's going to be a huge move. It's going to be a huge market move, if you say the least. The US is suing Apple for allegedly being an illegal monopoly. So it says here the Department of Justice has claimed that Apple is operating an illegal monopoly. Those are huge statements, serious accusation, if to say the least. But I hear you wondering, why would Apple be accused of being a monopoly? What is a monopoly in business? We've all probably played the game Monopoly. You know the concept about it. So in the business world, a monopoly is simply a company that hold huge amount of advantages and use said advantages in perhaps unfriendly manner to gain a unfair advantage over additional smaller companies. So in Apple case, they have a huge advantage in the smartphone space, but not just that, they have an incredible ecosystem and they have this ecosystem in so many ways. The Apple ecosystem is vast. We know that, of course. And the last few years, Apple has incurred quite a few complaints and lawsuits, along with, for instance, Epic Games were actually suing Apple. And it was over this same ordeal that Apple operates a sort of monopoly in the space. Netflix has had complaints over Apple. Spotify has been a huge complainer of Apple because Spotify is being charged 30% on Apple devices. Apple charges 30% of all of that income that comes from Spotify on their iPhones. And here's the thing, Spotify, Epic Games, they see this as unfair. But you're probably thinking, well, it's Apple's system. If they want to charge 30%, that's up to them. Well, here's where it gets even more interesting. Apple will not allow these companies to create an alternative payment system for us, the consumers. We cannot use an alternative payment system to go around the Apple system. Apple won't allow it. They will not have it. And this has created a lot of controversy because it's like, okay, you can charge us that 30%, but now you want to control how we take our payments. We can't take it in an alternative way. Apple is like, no. If you operate an iPhone and the consumer wants to use that app, they need to pay through the iPhone. And it's like, holy crap. Now this is where it gets interesting because that in itself is too much control. Because then you're telling someone that, hey, you cannot use another payment system. You have to use ours and it has a tax. It has a 30% tax. You cannot use another payment system that only offers a 5% tax or a 1% tax. You can't do that. Apple goes as far as saying to companies, even to Facebook, that listen, you're not allowed to tell consumers that it's us, Apple, who's charging the 30%. Because Facebook tried to do this. Facebook tried to explain to its users, it's not us who's charging you this 30%, it's Apple who wants an extra 30%. There you go. Apple reprimanded Facebook, and they've been at each other's neck for quite a few times now. And to a certain extent that they almost killed Facebook, but thankfully Facebook was smart enough to outmaneuver Apple in that situation. In fact, Facebook, the Metro company now, it's bigger than it's ever been. And that's after Apple tried to destroy it. So just goes to show this is quite a bit more complicated. But it's many different companies that Apple have had grievance with. It can't just be these companies. There must be a moral issue in this controversy. There has to be. It's one thing to tell me that you have to pay this tax, but it's another thing to tell me that you're not allowed to use any other services to avoid paying this tax. And Apple is not a government body, by the way. After Apple takes the 30%, these companies still have to pay the government the corporation tax. So it says here, the DOJ, along with 16 states and district attorney generals, accuse Apple of driving up prices for consumers and developers at the expense of making users more reliant on the iPhone. The party alleged that Apple selectively imposed contractual restriction on developers with withhold critical ways of accessing the phone as a way to prevent competition from arising. This is another issue. It's how Apple makes it incredibly difficult to ever transition or buy and convert to an Android phone. They make it really difficult. They make it almost unbearable because in the US, they have this thing where a lot of people don't like the green bubbles. What Apple has are blue bubbles if you're using Apple devices. If you're using an Android phone and you try to join a group chat, your bubbles will come up as green and everyone else's will be blue who's using Apple. And people really don't like this in the US. That's a really odd thing for me. if I'm being completely honest. I mean, the world is 2024 and we're complaining about the color of bubbles, the color of your messages. Apparently, people don't like green that much. When we walk around outside, we see green everywhere, but apparently, people don't want it on their phone. It's really bizarre. Everything that I'm filming right now, it's all connected to the Apple device. So, Apple makes it seamless. They make it easy. I told you, I'm using my teleprompter. I'm telling you, Apple creates this amazing ecosystem that it's almost, and other companies are just doing a terrible job competing with Apple. So there's a few more statements that were made. A couple of them were really important to point out. Suppressing the quality of messaging between iPhone and competing platforms like Android. This is what they said. So people are complaining that Apple makes it difficult. You've got consumer complaining, and you've got corporations complaining that Apple charges too much on tax. There's a lot of people who's complaining against Apple. That's not going to go away with a good argument in court. There's going to be serious repercussions of this. This is going to slow Apple's growth down. This is going to limit Apple. Most of the work is already done. Psychologically, people are already in love with the Apple devices and Apple platforms. Most of the work is already done. If Apple were to remove some of these barriers and gatekeeping ways, I still think that Apple will be the strongest competitor in the smartphone and computing space, no doubt. They might lose a few percentage for sure, but it's not going to have an end of world impact, if you get what I mean. Another statement that was made was limiting the functionalities of third-party smartwatches with its iPhone and making it harder for Apple Watch users to switch from iPhone due to the compatibility issues. This is true. This is very much true. I believe with your Apple Watch, you cannot use any other smartphone with it. It's not like you can't, it's just that Apple decided not to allow you to. Blocking third-party developers from creating competing digital wallets with tap-to-pay functionalities for iPhone. This is what I meant. Epic, Netflix, Facebook, Spotify, these are all companies who would like to outmaneuver Apple, take an alternative payment method, but Apple won't allow it. They won't allow it. So suing Apple for monopoly, it has a lot of grounds. It has a lot of strong arguments. Apple is moving very suspicious, and they've been doing this for a very long time. Over a decade. Some of this has been done for over a decade. When it comes to the amount of money they charge people for using the App Store, this has been going on for over a decade. Long time. Perhaps since the App Store came out, they've been charging 30%. So it's nothing new. So Apple has already made most of the money they wanted to make. So I tell you, this impact will have an impact on Apple, but it's not going to be an end of the world impact. If anything, this is probably a good thing to Apple because they're going to think of new ways to outsmart consumers and corporations and the governments. They're going to think of new ways. They're already thinking about new ways. Their statement confirms that they've been preparing for something like this for a very long time. Let's get into the statement. Apple's statement from Fred Saint said that the lawsuit threatens who we are and the principles that set Apple products apart from the fiercely competitive market. If successful, it would hinder our ability to create the kind of technology people expect from Apple, where hardware, software, and services interact, the ecosystem. And KBHB made a great video on the Apple ecosystem. You should check it out, and how Apple acquires other companies and at the same time destroys the smaller competitors. I'm telling you, it's really wild. Apple does some stuff that it doesn't always get published. I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm just saying it's a little bit anti-competitive. And the government do not like anti-competitive behavior because it will discourage other creators and other competitors for joining the market. And that's terrible for a country's growth. So the statement continues to say, it would also set a dangerous precedent empowering governments to take a heavy hand in designing people's technology. Apple spokesperson Fred Saints, really clever wording to add into this, because basically what they're telling us, the consumers, that it's not our fault, it's the government's fault. They want to control how your device operates. They want to control how we build your device for you. But if you're a regular person, you probably already know the government already controls this. They've always controlled this. All of the technology that's built around us, it's built within the government's guideline and laws and regulations. This is nothing new, what the government is doing. This is nothing new, but Apple will add this in because they're trying to gain your sympathy. They're trying to gain you to be against the government. They're trying to gain public support. Very clever wording. This is how I'm quite certain that they've been preparing for this for a very long time. And For the most part, they're probably going to get away with most of this that is being said in this article. But there's at least 1 or 2 points that they're probably not going to get away with. These payment systems, the messaging systems, I don't see them getting out of those easily because those are actually anti-competitive. And that in itself is almost monopoly-wise because you're creating a way for others not being able to play fair. It gets complicated, but keep it simple at the same time. Now, this article also adds that earlier this month, the European Commission fined Apple 1.84 billion. But where does all this money go? I always wonder, when they charge these large companies billions of dollars, where does the money go? And the European Union has been on a run. They've been fining a lot of companies money, but where does the money go? The European Union has also made Apple switch to USB-C on the iPhone. That also in itself was a little bit of a monopoly. Why would Apple want you to continue using Lightning ports? Why? It might seem backwards. This is the company who got rid of the headphone jack, but they did that because they wanted to sell you the AirPods for $200. Really clever business. Take away something that you find useful, sell you the solution. Create a problem, sell you the solution. I'm telling you, it's business. It's business at its finest. And I believe the AirPod business for Apple makes more money than Uber and Netflix. Now that's a crazy stat. By the way, the DOJ has also had prior lawsuit and future lawsuits with Google. And that's not stopping anytime soon. They're going to be in contact with Google in the fall about some more Google advisement technology. There's going to be a case over that. Also, there's also this controversy that Google pays Apple to be the default search engine on Apple's devices. And this might have to get changed in the near future. There've been talk about when this will be changed, when the government will crack down on this, one step at a time. But there's a lot that's going to change for Apple, because I think this is the first time that they've been publicly accused of being a monopoly by a government body. They've been accused before by corporations and individuals, but by a government body, this is perhaps the first time. And it's going to be interesting to watch this go down. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to see more. Leave a comment, and of course, I'll see you in our next video. Peace.